Hello, welcome to this Ned Davis Research video where we will help you see the signals. My name is Brian Sanborn, NDR's Global Head of Investment Solutions. In this episode, we'll be speaking with NDR's Chief Economist, Alejandra Grindal, about the current state of the global economy. Alejandra, what are the data telling you?
Yeah, so far, so good. Some of the latest data from the global PMIs has been telling us that the global economy has shown continuing signs of accelerating momentum. The latest data we have from PMI is April, so that's super timely. That's actually why we like watching this data pretty closely. But specifically, the global composite, which includes services and manufacturing, so it's a good monthly proxy for global GDP. It rose 0.1 point to 52.4. This is actually the sixth straight monthly gain, so pretty long winning streak, and the highest level since June 2023. And the reason this is important, especially for investors, is as you can see on this chart, when you see accelerating economic momentum, and in this case, we're looking at the 3-month change in the global composite PMI just to kind of grab the broader trend, it's historically been consistent with pretty strong equity market gains.
And so for how long do you think this economic acceleration will likely persist?
Well, so the good news is I think the global economy is in pretty good shape. But if you look at some of the data, specifically all of those successive gains we've seen in the PMIs, they usually don't last much longer than 6 months. And as I said, we're already at that 6-month winning streak. So it could suggest that the composite could take a little bit of a breather soon. And then when you look at some of the underlying indicators within the report, so things such as new orders, the future output index, they're still at decent levels, but they did ease modestly in April. But as I mentioned before, the good news is there really aren't any signs that recession or a really sharp global slowdown is imminent. And that's good news because, that's typically associated with bad equity market performance. The good news is those leading indicators I mentioned are still in really firm growth territory. And then if you look at that global composite PMI I mentioned, it's still below its long-term average. So what this essentially means is that there's more room for upside in the intermediate term. In other words, the global economy is not really overheated. There's still more room for growth. And the good news is the growth was reasonably broad. So we're seeing manufacturing and the services sector expanding. Services is obviously the stronger of the two, but the fact that they're both expanding is a good sign.
Now, switching gears a little bit, what are you seeing with regards to inflation?
That's the big kicker, right? So we know that inflation globally peaked in 2022 and it slowed markedly. However, since the middle of last year, prices have just been a little tougher to fall more. So, that disinflation has gotten a little stickier. And we saw signs of that in the latest global PMI report. So if you look at the global composite input and output price indexes, they actually did ease a little bit in April. We saw the number spike quite a bit in the prior month, mainly because of the US. So we saw a little bit of correction from that. So that's good news. But the bad news is that even though we saw this moderation in prices, both of those indexes have been in a tight range since mid-2023, and they're above pre-pandemic levels. So that's kind of the difference. Where we're seeing the pressures, for example, input prices, so these are the inputs that go into making a final product, they actually shot up quite a bit in the manufacturing sector. A lot of this is the rising commodity prices we've been seeing. But selling prices rose to a lesser degree. So this could indicate some pressure on margins. Growth in global services and output prices, they did ease a little bit last month, but they're still a bit above pre-pandemic. If you compare developed and emerging economies, both regions, if you want, or groups of economies, did see their price pressures ease. But for quite some time, the price pressures have been much higher in developed economies compared to emerging economies.
Now, Alejandra, I know one of your areas of expertise is global comparative economics. Is there one particular economy that's really standing out to you right now?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And we put out, shameless plug, we put out a quarterly large report where we provide overviews on the world's largest economies, where they are, where we see them headed. And one particular area that has actually stood out for quite some time, we've been, pointing out this relative strength for several years now, is India. It's been one of the most reliable sources of growth among the world's largest economy. And it's important to realize this is now the world's fifth largest economy. And in 2023, or at least in Q4 of 2023 from a year earlier, the economy grew 8.4%. That's pretty good. And that's even pretty good for India, right? It was the fastest expansion in 6 quarters. And if you look at a lot of the latest data, including the PMIs that I mentioned, there seems to be more of the same, right? More of that strong growth. So just for example, India's April composite PMI was at 61.5. This is one of the highest levels in the world. And even for India, it was one of the highest levels in 14 years. Business orders rose to a 14-year high, led by strong domestic and external demand. So it's kind of taking up that role of large exporter, especially as we, cut back ties with China. Both services and manufacturing sectors are showing robust growth. We like to watch the OECD leading indicator. It was flat throughout a lot of 2023, but it actually increased in March and rose to its highest level since December 2022. So, kind of showing that things are moving in the right direction.
Alejandra, thank you very much for your insights. NDR clients can read Alejandra's research notes in her weekly Global Economic Focus publication. The indicators Alejandra and the research team develop for our research subscription service are also used in our model portfolios, which are available for direct delivery, on TAMPs, and as ETFs. For more information on NDR, we encourage you to visit ndr.com. Also, for those listening in listen-only mode, video versions, including the charts of See the Signals, are available by going to info.ndr.com/ndr-signals. Thank you for joining us as we help you see the signals. So long.